The bride was 6 months pregnant, glowing with joy at her reception. The gunman's finger tightened on the trigger, aiming at her heart. Then a security guard, a single father of an 8-year-old girl, made the ultimate sacrifice. The entire ballroom broke down crying at what they witnessed next. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Jake Matthews was a simple man with calloused hands and a heart full of love for his 8-year-old daughter, Emma. His wife Sarah had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving him to raise Emma alone. Every morning at 6:30 sharp, he would wake up before his alarm clock and tiptoe to the kitchen to make Emma's favorite pancakes shaped like hearts. He had perfected the recipe over the years, adding just a hint of vanilla and cinnamon the way Sarah used to make them. Every night, he would sit on the edge of Emma's small pink bed and read her bedtime stories until she fell asleep, her tiny hand clutching his finger. Jake worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. During the day he worked construction at various sites around the city, his strong back carrying heavy materials under the scorching sun. His co-workers respected him for his work ethic and gentle nature. He never complained about overtime or difficult projects. On weekends he worked security at events, weddings, corporate parties, charity galas, anything that would bring in extra money for Emma's school supplies, clothes, and the small treats that made her smile. The apartment they shared was modest but filled with love. Emma's drawings covered the refrigerator like colorful wallpaper. Her artwork showed stick figures of her and her daddy holding hands, hearts floating above their heads, and always a bright yellow sun in the corner. The living room had a worn-out couch where they would curl up together every Friday night to watch Disney movies, sharing a bowl of popcorn and hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. "Daddy, will you ever get married again?" Emma asked one evening while they shared a bowl of strawberry ice cream, their special Sunday tradition. Jake paused, his spoon halfway to his mouth. He looked into Emma's innocent brown eyes, so much like her mother's, and felt his heart squeeze. "Maybe someday, sweetheart. But right now you and I are a perfect team. We don't need anyone else to be happy, do we?" Emma giggled and shook her head. "Nope. We're the best team ever." She reached over and hugged him tight, getting ice cream on his work shirt. Jake didn't mind. These moments were worth more than gold to him. On a sunny Saturday morning in June, Jake was working security at the Grand Riverside Hotel for what promised to be the wedding of the year. The bride, Maria Gonzalez, was radiant in her flowing white dress that accommodated her 6-month pregnant belly. She was marrying David Chin, a kind-hearted accountant who had fallen in love with both Maria and her unborn child from the moment he met her. Jake watched from his post near the garden entrance as the couple exchanged vows, remembering his own wedding day with Sarah 8 years ago. The ceremony was beautiful. Maria's pregnancy glow made her look like an angel, and David's eyes never left her face as they promised to love each other forever. The guests dabbed at their eyes with tissues as the couple kissed, sealing their union. Jake found himself smiling, thinking about how love could bloom even in the most unexpected circumstances. "Beautiful ceremony, isn't it?" said an elderly woman in a lavender dress who had approached his station. "Yes, ma'am." "Reminds me that love still exists in this world," Jake replied softly, his hand unconsciously touching the wedding ring he still wore on a chain around his neck. "Are you married, young man?" she asked kindly. "I was. My wife passed away 3 years ago. I have a daughter now, just the 2 of us." The woman's expression softened with sympathy. "I'm sure you're a wonderful father. Your daughter is lucky to have you." But Jake didn't know that outside the hotel, hidden behind a large oak tree, Maria's ex-boyfriend Vincent Torres was watching through the windows. Vincent had been in prison for 2 years on assault charges and had just been released 2 weeks ago. His parole officer had warned him to stay away from Maria, but Vincent couldn't let go of his obsession. He was angry, bitter, and couldn't accept that Maria had moved on with her life. The sight of her pregnant with another man's child filled him with rage that had been building for months. Vincent had a gun tucked in his jacket, a weapon he had bought illegally from a contact he made in prison. His hands shook as he watched Maria laugh and dance with her new husband. In his twisted mind he believed that if he couldn't have her, nobody could. The rational part of his brain that might have stopped him had been consumed by jealousy and years of resentment. During the reception, as Maria and David were cutting their 3-tier wedding cake decorated with white roses and baby's breath, Vincent made his move. He burst through the main doors of the ballroom like a storm cloud entering paradise. His eyes were wild with rage, his hair disheveled, and his clothes wrinkled from sleeping in his car for days while he planned this moment. "Maria!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the elegant ballroom and silencing the joyful chatter instantly. The band stopped playing mid-song. "You think you can just forget about me?" Start a new life like I never existed. The guests screamed and scattered like frightened birds. Children started crying as their parents grabbed them and ran toward the exits. Tables were overturned in the chaos, sending crystal glasses and china plates crashing to the marble floor. The beautiful wedding cake toppled over, its carefully crafted roses scattering across the ground like fallen petals. Vincent pushed through the panicking crowd, his focus solely on Maria, who stood frozen with terror near the head table. David immediately stepped in front of his wife, his arms spread wide to protect her, but Vincent was stronger and more desperate. He shoved David aside with violent force, sending him stumbling into a nearby table. "Get away from her!" David shouted, trying to get back to his feet, but Vincent was already pulling out his gun. The weapon gleamed menacingly under the crystal chandeliers as Vincent pointed it directly at Maria's pregnant belly. His hands were shaking, but his intent was clear. "If I can't have you, no one can. And that baby, that should have been our baby." Maria's hands instinctively went to her stomach, protecting the life growing inside her. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Please, Vincent. Please don't do this. Think about what you're doing." "I've been thinking about this for 2 years." Vincent screamed. "Every day in that cell, thinking about you with someone else. This ends now." Jake had been standing near the gift table when Vincent burst in. His training kicked in immediately: assess the threat, protect the innocent, call for backup. But as he reached for his radio, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Vincent's finger was tightening on the trigger, and the gun was aimed not just at Maria, but at her unborn child. Time seemed to slow down like a movie playing in slow motion. Jake's mind flashed to Emma, who was at home with their neighbor Mrs. Johnson, probably doing her weekend homework at the kitchen table. She would be saving him a cookie from the batch of chocolate chip cookies they had baked together yesterday morning, just like she always did. She needed her daddy. She had already lost her mother in that terrible car accident. She couldn't lose him too. But then Jake looked at Maria, a woman about to become a mother, just like Sarah had been. He saw the terror in her eyes, the same desperate fear he had seen in Sarah's eyes that last night in the hospital when the doctors told them there was nothing more they could do. He thought about the baby growing inside Maria, an innocent life that deserved a chance to see the world, to laugh, to love, to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. In that split second, Jake made the most important decision of his life. He thought about what he would want someone to do if Emma were in danger. He thought about the promise he had made to Sarah on her deathbed, that he would always protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As Vincent's finger began to squeeze the trigger, Jake launched himself forward with every ounce of strength in his body. His construction-hardened muscles propelled him through the air like a human shield. He threw his body between the gun and Maria just as the sound of the gunshot echoed through the ballroom like thunder. The bullet that was meant for Maria and her unborn child struck Jake squarely in the chest, just above his heart. The impact sent him crashing to the ground, his body hitting the marble floor with a sickening thud. Blood immediately began seeping through his white security uniform shirt, spreading like spilled wine across the fabric. But even as he fell, Jake's eyes found Maria, who was safe behind him, unharmed and alive. Her baby was safe. That was all that mattered. "Are you okay?" he whispered to her, his voice already growing weak as his life force began to ebb away. Maria dropped to her knees beside him, her wedding dress billowing around her like white clouds. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with her makeup and dripping onto Jake's chest. Why did you do this? You don't even know me." Jake's breathing was becoming labored, each word a struggle. Every child deserves a chance to live. Every mother deserves to hold her baby. His hand moved slowly to the chain around his neck, where Sarah's ring rested. "I promised my wife. I would always protect the innocent." The police had arrived within minutes, their sirens wailing outside the hotel. Officers swarmed into the ballroom and quickly arrested Vincent, who had dropped the gun in shock after seeing what his bullet had done to an innocent man. Vincent was sobbing now, the full weight of his actions crashing down on him as he was handcuffed and led away. Paramedics rushed to Jake's side with their medical equipment, but even their experienced eyes could see that the wound was fatal. The bullet had pierced his heart and he was losing blood too quickly. One of the paramedics, a young woman named Lisa, knelt beside him and took his hand. "Sir, what's your name?" she asked gently, checking his pulse. Jake Matthews," he managed to say. "I have a daughter, Emma Matthews. She's 8 years old. She's at 425 Oak Street with my neighbor, Mrs. Johnson. Please, tell her that Daddy loves her more than all the stars in the sky. Tell her she was the best thing that ever happened to me." Lisa squeezed his hand. "We'll make sure she knows." Jake's eyes were starting to close, but he fought to keep them open. Tell her to be brave. To help others when she can. And tell her that mommy and daddy are together now, watching over her always. David had made his way over and was kneeling on Jake's other side. Thank you, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. You saved my wife. You saved my child. How can we ever repay you? Jake's lips curved into the faintest smile. Take care of each other. Love that baby. Give him, or her, the life they deserve. That's all the payment I need. Back at 425 Oak Street, Emma was sitting at Mrs. Johnson's kitchen table, her tongue sticking out slightly as she concentrated on coloring a picture of a rainbow. It was a surprise for her daddy. She always made him something special for when he came home from his weekend security jobs. Mrs. Johnson was in the kitchen making sandwiches for lunch when her phone rang. Emma looked up when she heard Mrs. Johnson gasp and saw her cover her mouth with her hand. What's wrong, Mrs. Johnson? Emma asked, setting down her purple crayon. Mrs. Johnson's eyes filled with tears as she listened to the voice on the other end of the phone. When she hung up, she stood there for a moment, trying to figure out how to tell an 8-year-old that her world was about to change forever. She walked over to Emma and knelt down beside her chair, taking the little girl's hands in her own wrinkled ones. Sweetheart, Mrs. Johnson began, her voice trembling, your daddy was a hero today. He saved a mommy and her baby from a very bad man. Emma's eyes lit up with pride. Really? My daddy's a hero? Yes, baby. But... Mrs. Johnson's voice broke. But sometimes when people are heroes they get hurt. Your daddy got hurt very badly and he won't be coming home. Emma's smile faded slowly as she tried to understand. What do you mean he won't be coming home? Is he in the hospital? Can we go see him? No, sweetheart. Your daddy died. But he died saving people just like the heroes in your storybooks. And he wanted you to know that he loves you more than all the stars in the sky. Emma's small world collapsed around her like a house of cards. The rainbow she had been coloring slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor. No, she whispered. Mrs. Johnson gathered Emma into her arms as the little girl began to sob, her small body shaking with grief that no child should have to bear. First her mommy, now her daddy. Emma felt completely and utterly alone in the world. The news of Jake's heroic sacrifice spread quickly through the community. By evening, flowers and cards had begun appearing at the entrance to their apartment building. The local news stations picked up the story, and soon Jake's face was on television screens across the city, hailed as a hero who gave his life to save a pregnant woman and her unborn child. At the hotel, Maria was in the hospital being checked to make sure the trauma hadn't harmed her baby. The doctors confirmed that both mother and child were physically fine, but Maria couldn't stop crying. This stranger, this security guard she had never even spoken to, had died to save her family. I don't even know his last name, she sobbed to David. He died for us and I don't even know who he was. David held her close, his own eyes red from crying. His name was Jake Matthews. Yes, had an 8-year-old daughter named Emma. She's an orphan now because of what he did for us. That night, neither Maria nor David could sleep. They lay in their hospital bed talking about Jake, about his daughter, about the incredible sacrifice he had made. By morning they had made a decision that would change everything. Jake's funeral was held at St. Mary's Church on a gray Thursday morning. The church was packed beyond capacity with people spilling out onto the street. Maria and David sat in the front row next to Emma, who looked tiny in her black dress. Mrs. Johnson sat on Emma's other side, her arm around the grieving child. Maria's pregnancy was now more visible at 7 months, and she kept one hand protectively over her belly throughout the service. She couldn't stop thinking about how this baby would never have existed without Jake's sacrifice. The pastor spoke about Jake's life, his devotion to his daughter, his work ethic, and his final act of heroism. But the most powerful moment came when Emma stood up to speak. Mrs. Johnson had to help her up to the podium because she was too short to reach the microphone. My daddy was the best daddy in the whole world, Emma said in her small voice that echoed through the silent church. He made me heart-shaped pancakes every morning and read me stories every night. He worked really hard so I could have nice things. And he always told me to help people when they need help. Her voice wavered. I guess he was helping people one more time. I'm sad he's gone, but I'm proud he was my daddy. There wasn't a dry eye in the church as Emma returned to her seat and buried her face in Mrs. Johnson's shoulder. After the service, as people were filing out and offering their condolences, Maria approached Emma and Mrs. Johnson. Her hands were shaking as she knelt down to Emma's level. Emma, Maria said gently, I know nothing can replace your daddy, but David and I, We would be honored if you would come live with us. Your daddy saved our family. Now we want to be part of yours." Emma looked up with tear-filled eyes, her small face streaked with the remnants of crying. "But you don't know me. And I don't know you." "Your daddy didn't know us either," David said, kneeling down beside his wife. "But he loved us enough to save us. That tells us what kind of man he was and what kind of daughter he raised. We want to love you the way he would have wanted you to be loved." Mrs. Johnson squeezed Emma's shoulders. "What do you think, sweetheart? Your daddy would want you to be with a real family." Emma was quiet for a long moment, thinking about what her daddy would want. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay. But can I bring my daddy's pictures? And the pancake pan? He made the best heart pancakes." Maria smiled through her tears. "Of course. We'll bring everything that was important to you and your daddy." The transition wasn't easy. Emma moved into Maria and David's suburban home 2 weeks after the funeral. She had her own room decorated in soft pinks and yellows, with all of her artwork and photos of her parents covering the walls. But at night, she would often crawl into bed with Maria and David, afraid that if she went to sleep they might disappear too. Maria and David were patient and loving, understanding that Emma's heart was broken and would take time to heal. They attended grief counseling together as a family, learning how to help Emma process her loss while building new bonds of love and trust. 6 months later, Emma was helping Maria prepare the nursery when Maria went into labor. The baby, a healthy boy they had decided to name Jake in honor of Emma's father, was born on a snowy December morning. Emma was the first person besides the parents to hold him. "Hi, little Jake," she whispered to the tiny bundle in her arms. "I'm your big sister Emma. My daddy, the one you're named after, he made sure you got to be born. He would have loved you so much." The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around Emma's pinky, and in that moment, everyone in the hospital room felt Jake's presence watching over them. Emma looked up at Maria and David with tears in her eyes. "I think my daddy sent him to us," she said softly, "to help us all feel better." Years passed, and Emma grew up in a house filled with love and laughter. She excelled in school and was always the first to help classmates who were struggling. She had learned from her father's example that helping others was one of the most important things a person could do. When she turned 16, Maria and David officially adopted her, though she had been their daughter in every way that mattered since she was 8. The ceremony was small but meaningful, held in the same church where Jake's funeral had taken place. Emma chose to keep the last name Matthews, hyphenating it with Chen so she would be Emma Matthews-Chen, carrying on her father's legacy while embracing her new family. Emma grew up to become a pediatric nurse, drawn to helping children the way she wished someone could have helped her during her darkest days. She specialized in working with children who had lost parents, understanding their pain in a way that textbooks could never teach. Little Jake grew up hearing stories about the hero he was named after. Emma would tell him about Jake Matthews' strong hands that could build anything, his gentle heart that made the best pancakes, and his brave soul that saved 3 lives in one moment of courage. Jake Chen Matthews grew up proud to carry the name of such an extraordinary man. Every year on the anniversary of that terrible and wonderful day, the family would visit Jake's grave in Riverside Cemetery. Emma would place fresh flowers, always sunflowers because her daddy had said she was his sunshine, and tell him about their lives. "Daddy, I graduated nursing school today," she said on her 22nd birthday. Maria and David walked me across the stage, and little Jake cheered so loud that everyone turned around to look. "We're all doing good, Daddy. We're all together because of you." When Emma was 25, she brought her boyfriend Marcus to meet her family. Marcus was a teacher who worked with inner-city kids, and Emma had fallen in love with his dedication to helping others. As they sat around the dinner table that had become the center of their family life, little Jake, now 17 and about to graduate high school, raised his glass of apple cider. "To Jake Matthews," he said solemnly, "the man who taught us that love isn't just about the people you know. It's about protecting anyone who needs protection. It's about being willing to give everything for someone else's tomorrow." Emma smiled through her tears. "To Daddy, who showed us that heroes aren't in comic books or movies. They're ordinary people who make extraordinary choices when it matters most." The story of Jake Matthews spread throughout the city and beyond. The Riverside Hotel created the Jake Matthews Hero Award, given annually to someone who showed extraordinary courage in helping others. The first recipient was a firefighter who had saved a family of 5 from a burning building. The second was a teacher who had used her own body to shield her students during a school shooting. Maria and David started the Emma's Angels Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping single parents who were struggling to make ends meet. They provided financial assistance, childcare, job training, and emotional support. The foundation's motto was, "One act of love changes everything," and they helped hundreds of families every year. Emma kept her father's construction helmet on her dresser throughout her childhood and into adulthood. Inside it, she had placed a note he had written her years ago when she was learning to ride her bike. "Emma, always remember, the size of your heart is more important than the size of your problems. Love big, help others, and make me proud. You are my sunshine, and you make every day worth living." When Emma got married to Marcus 3 years later, she carried a small photo of her father in her bouquet. During the ceremony, she had a moment of silence to honor both her birth parents and the adoptive parents who had raised her with such love. As she and Marcus exchanged vows, she promised to love him the way her father had loved her mother, completely, selflessly, and forever. Their first child was a daughter they named Sarah, after Emma's birth mother. When Emma held her daughter for the first time, she whispered, "Welcome to the world, little one. You have the most amazing guardian angels watching over you." The ripple effects of Jake's sacrifice continued to spread. Emma's Angels Foundation grew into a national organization. Young Jake became a social worker specializing in helping orphan children find loving homes. Maria became a motivational speaker, sharing their story and inspiring others to perform acts of kindness in their daily lives. At one speaking engagement, Maria was asked by an audience member how one moment could change so many lives. "Love is like a stone thrown into a pond," Maria replied. Jake's love created ripples that are still spreading today. His daughter Emma became a nurse who has helped thousands of children. His namesake Jake is now helping orphans find families. Our foundation has assisted over 5,000 single parents. And every person we've helped has gone on to help others. That's the power of one person choosing love over fear. Emma eventually became the head of pediatric nursing at the children's hospital where she worked. She instituted a program called Heart Helpers, where staff members were trained to provide extra emotional support to children who had lost parents. She never forgot what it felt like to be a scared, lonely child who needed someone to believe in her future. On Emma's 30th birthday, the entire extended family gathered for a celebration that Jake Matthews could never have imagined when he woke up that fateful Saturday morning to make heart-shaped pancakes for his 8-year-old daughter. The dining room table was filled with faces he had saved and lives he had changed. Maria and David, now married for over 20 years. Jake Chin Matthews, now a confident young man in college studying social work. Emma and Marcus with their 3 children. Mrs. Johnson, now in her 80s but still sharp as a tack, and dozens of other people whose lives had been touched by Jake's legacy of love. As they sat around the table sharing stories and laughter, Emma stood up to make a toast. In her hands, she held the same glass her father had drunk from 22 years ago. 22 years ago, my daddy made a choice that changed all of our lives. He chose love over fear, sacrifice over safety, others over himself. But I want you all to know something. He didn't just save Maria and baby Jake that day. He saved me too. Because his sacrifice brought me to this family, gave me parents who loved me, a brother who protects me, and showed me that even when terrible things happen, love finds a way. She looked around the table at all the faces, young and old, biological and chosen family, all connected by one man's moment of incredible courage. Daddy always told me that the size of your heart is more important than the size of your problems. Tonight, looking at all of you, I know that his heart was the biggest of all. And because of him, all of our hearts grew bigger too. As the evening wound down and people began to head home, Emma walked out to the backyard and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, she knew her daddy was watching, probably sitting next to her mama, both of them smiling down at the family that had grown from one moment of perfect love. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered to the starlit sky. "Thank you for showing us what love really means. Thank you for saving us all." And somewhere, in a place beyond the stars where love never dies and heroes never fade, Jake Matthews smiled. His single moment of courage had created ripples of love that would continue for generations. His sacrifice had shown that love truly does conquer everything, even death itself. The single dad who took a bullet to shield a pregnant bride had given the greatest gift of all. He had shown the world that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose love over fear, when they choose to protect rather than to hide, when they choose to give their tomorrow so that others can have theirs. His legacy lived on in every act of kindness performed in his memory, in every child helped by Emma's nursing care, in every family assisted by the foundation that bore his daughter's name, and in every person who heard his story and decided to love a little bigger, help a little more, and live a little braver. Jake Matthews may have died that day in the ballroom of the Riverside Hotel, but his love, his perfect, selfless, world-changing love, would live forever.